a function-based index. Now this is an interesting one because, as I said before, what it does is it applies an expression and generates index values out of the results of the expression, which is why it's called a function-based index. Function-based indexes create binary trees using the results of expressions, or an expression applied to all columns or items of data that you're indexing from a table. And all I'm trying to do with these diagrams is just show you how it works. The same as the B tree and the bitmap, so that you understand what you're actually doing. So what this does, it says create date of show on the show table, and the index is actually the to-char value of the show date. Internally, a date in Oracle is stored as a Julian number. If you were to pull out the date, the default format is date, month and year, but actually internally it is a date plus a timestamp. If you index based on show date, it will index based on that internal value. So if you wanted to find a specific row based on the year and the month, you're still going to have to apply this function to it. So you won't be using an index because there is no index. If you don't create the function-based index, there is no index that is indexed on to-char show date. So if you wanted to find all rows using the index, assuming that's efficient, that have year, month, in other words 2012 and the word December, then you would actually create a function-based index that applies the character transformation to the show date to produce these values or these formatted date settings or values for all the dates in the table. Something like this: 2002 August, October. Now, obviously with the data in the shows table, if it's large, this is not really going to be an efficient use of a function-based index, but I would hope that it serves to demonstrate how we've actually taken the show date and structured it in a different way, so that when we search and say where to-char show date blah blah blah, it actually can read the index values, so it doesn't have to read the entire table to find a single row out of millions of rows. It can go into the index and find with 2002 August applied by this in the where clause, this exact statement. The where clause must match the statement used in the function-based index. So the index is created using to-char, forcing the search on the index of the result of the calculation. So you must actually look with this same specification that's used to create the function-based index. Function-based indexes can be very efficient if used properly and appropriately. Again, what I'm doing here is I'm just linking these two rows together to show you which row links to which row, so you understand exactly how the row ID links to this particular record down here. And the same applies again with the second value, where I'm showing you the last row and the last row ID matching these two rows. Obviously there are going to be lots of duplications in here, so finding this data may not necessarily be efficient unless you're doing a large range search. The problem with Oracle is that if it gets to the point where it's reading so much data in the table, it won't bother with the index, because it's more efficient to just read the entire table as opposed to reading the index and the table. If it tries to read too many index entries, the optimizer will simply say, well, let's not read the index, let's ignore it and then read the table. So in this particular case, for this particular function-based index, it may not be very efficient, although we could possibly compress the index as well, which might help too. But that is the very basics of a function-based index. The two critical factors you've got to remember is that first of all, you create the index and it builds the index out of the result of the expressions. So every show date gets converted, and this is what's indexed. This is what's stored in the index. The second important thing you have to remember is that when you try to search using that function-based index, in order to use it, your where clause must contain the exact same expression that is contained in the function-based index create command. Otherwise, the function-based index will be completely ignored by Oracle.